5, 4.
We want to say good afternoon, good evening for many as well. This is the public affairs, public access broadcast of the Houston Media Source. Been in operation here in Houston, Texas for over 30 years. We are certainly glad to have you, our listeners, viewers, and we have a distinguished um, list of guests who are going to be here. Very prolific, involved leaders in our community. Dr. Bobby Mills, a noted sociologist from around the United States and some other areas, who's been involved in social justice issues and a number of others. And of course, Minister Charles X. White, one of the long time leaders in the community here in Houston, Texas, and as a representative, not only for the nation. Many years ago, he was one of the first business operators who had some prolific opportunities and has gone on to do and be involved in other things. And of course, we're joined by our judge, Judge Laurie Chambers Gray, who is the sitting judge, actual sitting. You can't hear. You can't. Mark, see if you can fix up. I think it might have to come from your end. Can you hear me at all? Miss Gray, unmute that technical. You might have to unmute that, because we can see you quite well. While we're getting those technical issues worked out, we do have a telephone number. From time to time, people like to call. We want you to feel free to call in to the station. But I want to say welcome to my guest first, as she gets that prepared. And Dr. Mills and I have been talking, Minister White, about the unfortunate circumstances of what's going on in Ukraine and really what's beginning to be a trickle down effect. I mean, I haven't bought any gas today, but from what I understand, it's bordering on $4 a gallon. There are certain aspects of our economy which are supposedly tied to this conflict, which we have really some questions about. Oh, you joined us back. Can you hear us now, Judge? Are you able to hear us at all? Judge Gray, can you hear us or see us? I think she's still working with that. See if she's still working with that. Well, anyhow, as she's working with that, let me see if I can get Dr. Mills to comment further on that idea of the collaborative reality. What's going on with what do you think is going on with that?
Well, Dr. Gilmore, good to be with you. But from my perspective, the spiritual war that has been going on for centuries between the Ukrainians and the Russians finally evolved into a physical war. And when you have a group of people who love freedom and democracy more so than autocracy, and do not want to be a part of an autocratic system and under autocratic leadership, and they're willing to die for the right to be free, it sounds like what we as blacks used to say: before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. And it seems as though that's what's playing out in Ukraine because obviously, even though their history, the Ukrainians and the Russians, their history is intertwined. The Russians tend to believe that their land and even their physical being belongs to them, so they decided to invade and make them succumb to their will. But I think they're finding out that it's a little bit more difficult than what they had thought. And so that's the sad part about it, is that it's a great spiritual war going on. And it is involved into a physical conflict. And there is going to be no winner. No winner in it. But I do not believe that the Ukrainians will ever submit to the rulership of Putin and his regime of oligarch autocrats. And I don't go down that road.
That's very interesting. Mr. White, I see you.
The only thing I can say is that I don't think President Biden should allow Putin to bluff the United States with the fear of nuclear war.
Oh no! Come on.
Yeah, no, you don't want to have a fool tell you that I'll do X, Y, and Z if you don't let me do what I want to do. Got to put him in check and let him know that America has the capability to withstand because we got an iron dome. And it has been proven in Israel, because we gave the technology to them, that it works.
Judge Gray, are you there?
I'm trying to join with video. Can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you. We can hear you. Thank you for joining us. I mean,
yes, I'm sorry. It's been so confusing. Let's see.
Oh no, that's technical realities with us in our society.
Yes,
we
there's a camera icon in the bottom left of your screen, ma'am.
Yes, I'm trying to join on my laptop.
Okay.
So.
Okay, you got another device working. Well, why are you trying to get that together?
Tell the judge that sometimes technology can be the devil.
I'm hearing that. I can definitely believe that.
Feel that,
Yes.
Mr. White, let me get your view. You as a brother of the Islamic faith, of course, right? And I know it. The religious aspect doesn't have a view as it relates to that particular situation. I don't think. I'm not familiar with the Russian. I know they have Orthodox, and different. But from the Islamic perspective, we really haven't heard a lot from the Islamic leadership. I mean, to some degree, McDonald's left town, but that's not considered on the Islamic side. How do you see that playing out? And because Bobby, he's scary right now about nuclear. He can talk about nuclear. We ain't but 10 minutes into this program. He talk.
Well, I'm with Bobby Mills.
Oh.
You got two white groups fighting, and it's historical with a land base that aggression and land go together. We see that playing out in the Black neighborhood in America.
True.
The land aggression to take over the Black neighborhoods, zip codes, 4th Ward, 3rd Ward, they're moving in on city gas. So it is, you you have to follow the money, and I think that one of the players that is being mentioned in this scenario, but it's not being mentioned too much, is China. China may be counting their chips because China may end up making a deal with Ukraine because China and Russia have a joint border, and I don't know a lot of the historical narratives that go with China and Russia as far as being partners, but I'm somewhat concerned about China, Russia, and what could have been, and what it looks like is still being played out. If Trump was in office, it seemed like it was a trilateral commission, so to speak, concept, with them trying to take over the world with the world's economy.
Judge, I'm sorry, go on. Was that you, Dr. Mills?
Yeah, I said all President Trump wanted obviously was personal wealth, money. So he would do anything or go along with anything. And I think that the silence of China, because they haven't really said anything openly, and even when it came to trying to censor the Russians in the United Nations, they kept quiet. They refused to vote one way or the other. And of course, we know why, because like you're saying, they're playing both sides against the middle, see who comes out the winner. And that's who they will go with, because they're just as autocratic in their leadership mentality as Russians are.
It's the world stage, which impacts all of us, even at home. That's a very interesting observation. Judge, I mean, I know that might not be in your pit, but obviously you have a view that nobody wants to see a nuclear bomb in Third Ward.
That's right. Yeah. I agree.
Well, I mean, at this stage, I made the statement earlier about, one of the thoughts originally was, where do we go from here? A community of chaos. It appears, I mean, for whatever reason, particularly since we've had this new administration, there's been a great deal of chaos around certain, health, education. As you mentioned, Mr. White, the ongoing onslaught by Republican leadership, if you would. I'm a nonpartisan person, not no pun intended, but voting rights challenges. I mean, and Dr. Mills had mentioned about the idea of the spiritual warfare, which I clearly agree on, and being able, I wish we could just put a tag on a person when they say, oh, I'm your enemy, we need to know who you fighting or whatever the case is. And I certainly don't have to press that point with you, Judge Gray, because of the onslaught of pontificators thinking that the bond system or this system is creating all the murders in Houston, and which is a lie, and which is a total lie, and it's an attack. It's like an attack. And so my question is for us to just ponder for a second: is the chaos more significant than the community? Because it seems like some of the community loves the chaos. Do people need the chaos?
when you think about it, January the 6th, 2021 is similar to what is going on between Russia and Ukraine, because the people who attack physically the capital seeking to overthrow a legitimate election, they were not doing that just from a physical perspective. There was a mental, spiritual slant to it, because they desire the same identical thing or process in terms of leadership that the Russians desire. They're autocratic too. It's white privilege, autocratic mentality. And I don't know whether you saw recently the young man and his sister whose father left Texas and went to Washington to participate in that with the Oath Keepers and the 3%ers and all those other white privilege-oriented groups. The young man, he testified and actually testified against his father in federal court the other day. And of course, the father's in jail now. They're going to sentence him in 3 months. But the thing that reflects and shows you how messed up these people are is Kyle Rittenhouse. Here's a 17-year-old, I know you remember this, a 17-year-old white male gets an assault weapon. His mother drives him from one state to another.
Mother drives.
Mother drives. Confused mother. Under the guise that he's going to function as some kind of civilian police force to keep the peace and keep people from destroying white folks' property.
This wasn't a connection. You don't think that some of these individuals have connections the way they thought that the Black Panthers had it?
Because look at what happened. They made a hero. President Trump participated. They made a hero out of Kyle Rittenhouse. The boy got off with killing 2 people and wounding a 3rd, and they raised millions of dollars for him. But now here's a young white man, 17, male, 17, I think. He's strong enough to go against his own malnutrition of the brain father. Because the boy tried to talk his father out of participating in that, the sister too. Now, have you heard anything about them putting together a GoFund, and donating money for college education for these kids, the little boy and his sister and so forth?
No.
Because the daddy told them, said, hey, look here, you know who's taking care of you, and if you go against me, you know what happens to a traitor.
Wait a minute. You just brought to memory, that was a recent, in the last couple of days, there's been some type of investigation about over 500 or 600 Black men who were killed in Houston, Harris County in the 60s, 70s, well, cold case murder. They just came out with it. It's supposed to have been a grant. And what it is, they're going to be investigating why all of these murders, we're talking about the 60s and the 70s, Black men who were killed in Houston and Harris County, and no charges filed.
Whoa.
That just came out of, you made me think about that. Because chaos for one group of people might not necessarily mean community for the other.
Right. Well, we look. You saw the 1619 project playing out even in the situation in Ukraine. The African students who were in Ukraine and trying to get out, get away from harm's way. You saw what was happening to them.
Well, you know what? This is so. This is the classic. This is the classic because I don't know if y'all noticed the other day, the young man who was the director of the Black Panther movie got arrested at the bank for trying to cash his own check. And the teller said, yeah, it was just a couple of days ago. The teller said that the note said, he's on the note, he said, it just, he wanted to withdraw some money, 10, 11, whatever. And he said, just please be discreet because, people follow you from the bank nowadays. Then we had another one in Houston where a young African-American female.
I remember that one.
Oh, okay. Dr. Mr. White was going to deposit her
a bonus check.
Yes, her check. I'm quite sure she looked quite well. So in other words, she's a nice-looking young Black woman, and they told her it wasn't her money. Judge, what you say? You should say something. You had a
No,
thought
I
on
remember that story, but I didn't hear about the first story that you mentioned about the
director.
The director.
Yeah, he got arrested momentarily until they took him outside, and it was in Atlanta at the way. And by the way, just because you're in Atlanta, they call Atlanta the third coast, whatever chocolate say. It was in Atlanta, and the Black officers recognized him as being, you got some money. This ain't, it's just, patted him on the back. And he was standing there with his hands up like this here, saying, Lord, thank you for not getting killed for trying to cash check my money. Mr. White, are we in a era? We're going into an era now. This is an era where chaos should be highly regarded as a part of how the game of political maneuvering, educational maneuvering is played. Should we all take that position? Because some of these leaders that we have today, no pun intended to any leader who might be listening or looking, are questionable.
Well, let me frame it like this. There in education, Black student achievement, they have a term, talk about low performing students, low performing schools. And there's someone coined the phrase food deserts related to the Black community because there were no significant grocery stores in certain Black neighborhoods. Now, if the schools are low performing and you have an essential element for a healthy community missing, and what moves money in America is public policy, and public policy is connected to an elected position. What seemed like to me that all the politicians that are representing in that area, those areas, should be called low-performing politicians. Because you can't separate the product from the tool. And the tool that moves the money is public policy. So it can hide money too. So I'm just gonna say that, as I often say, there is and there are solutions. But if you don't frame the solutions with the right mathematics, you're going to come with a big negative. And that's what the Black community is facing. And we're facing that because of the talking heads that are elected officials. And you can go back to 60 years plus. Actually, you can go back to 1865 and bring it forward. So we got a problem, and as you know, we didn't get the whole story. The chaos comes out of misinformation, propaganda, not being able to read, and comprehend, not getting the full story. People told election people told Black people they need to vote, but they left out why they need to vote. What about political action committees? When did Black people learn about that? So it's so much information that's missing, you can't help but have chaos. That's what they got going on in Russia, because Putin is telling one story to the Russian people because he controls the outlet of the communication.
Right.
So the communication vehicle and the message in the vehicle is one that where it's going to meet the truth at some point. And it's going to be a clash inside of Russia, especially when them boys start coming home in body bags.
Yeah.
That is something to think about. Judge, I mean, you have obviously been involved in thought process around that chaos. I mean, what's your view relative to, is it, more chaos that moves the ship as opposed to community wanting to help, with resources and support and, to deal with the real problem that is?
Well, I think it's multiple levels. I'm getting feedback. I don't know if you all are getting it as well.
You have two screens open. You have to close one of them.
Okay. Okay. Are you able?
We can hear you now.
We can hear you. Come on.
Not okay. So yeah, there are multiple levels in the Black community that needs to be addressed, and I think if we look at it, chaos from the media standpoint, if it bleeds, it leads, and so it just became profitable to talk about the chaos. But it's interesting that chaos was the talking point right as information was getting into the hands of the people. And so there's always this idea of, if it's that calm before the storm, you have the people wanting and demanding certain information, such as bail reform, for example. And then when steps are moving towards looking at from a holistic standpoint, does incarceration work? Does treatment work? And when you begin to implement all of that, and then all of a sudden on the other side, you will have those who will say, well, there's chaos because treatment is not working. I just believe that that we must remain laser focused, because if you continue to look at it as a global problem, it's overwhelming, and you'll say, well, I'm trying to stop water from an ocean that's leaking, and you can't do that. I think the idea of the people having a voice, especially if we're talking about American jurisprudence, the vote is the voice, and that is why that is such an issue right now with voter suppression tactics. And so there's a lot going on, but there's also discussion that's going on, which is good. And so the more information the people have, the better they are equipped to work in the vein that they can do something in. We can all do something, and so that's my thought about it. I mean, there's a lot going on in the world. I mean, I read stories about Africans who were in the Ukraine who couldn't cross over into Poland. So that's an issue that's also a European thing. It's an American discussion point here. We know the history here, but how did that happen? You know, what was the roadblock for the Africans not being able to cross over into neighboring countries? So there's a lot to talk about, for sure.
The reality of the diaspora, the African American experience, or the African diaspora. I remember, W.B. Du Bois and some others who talked about that. And I thought about it when Minister White was talking about the time frame. We're only 50 or 60 years removed from that period where it was some legislative opportunities put on the table to vote equitably in America. Now let's known the reality of the divisiveness within the systems, Dr. Mills, which perpetuated the actual systems, which perpetuated the inequities of as we see now, so many schools and other organizations wanting to hopefully make Black Lives Matter, and we've known Black Lives Matter the whole time. So I thought about that because the game, and I keep saying this in my mind, we got to be careful. And those of us who are viewers or thinkers of our own, we got to be careful because we have been subjected to so many different types of mental, would you say, Dr. Mills, spiritual games?
Yeah.
Over time, I'm saying, I'm using a time point.
The white Christians try to indoctrinate and teach slaves how to be a happy slave.
A happy slave.
There's no such thing as a happy slave. So they misquoted and misconstrued spiritual concepts in the Bible and told slaves, obey your master and learn how to be a happy slave. And that's why you had recently Judge Roy Moore from Alabama, a federal judge, could say that America was great when slavery existed. And we see, again, as the judge was saying, the 1619 Project playing itself out, even within the Ukrainian horrific, war-torn area, that the African students who were there and trying to escape the violence, they're being turned back and mistreated and maltreated. And right now we have Russians and Ukrainians at the southern border, and they're refugees. But when the Haitians and other Latin Americans from the Latin American countries appear, they're illegal immigrants.
Right.
But now, Brother Charles hit a very important point about chaos. And part of our chaos comes from our leadership, to be honest. We tend to not hold our political leaders or our religious leaders accountable. And when you have people who are elected to political office and they remain in there for 50 years and no new leadership is groomed, that's a problem in and of itself.
Right. Who should be responsible for the grooming?
The people who hold the positions, you know, the political leaders who hold the positions should be raring and rearing and whatever to groom new leadership.
Mm.
But you have a oxymoron according to some ways of the political mindset. I'm not going to groom you because you might take my place
right.
before I'm ready for you to take my place. Now
right. Before I die.
Right. I'm studying a video of a panel discussion with one of this brother named Jelani Cobb. And he is one of 4 scholars that are having a discussion about the 15th Amendment, 14th, 13th, and how our political leaders are in our history. We have not used the Constitution properly as an argument. Okay, and I thought that was so insightful and smart the way that they were articulating it. And you can do a Google search and see this panel discussion. And the title is "The Last Black History Month." That's the title of the interview, and I forget the host name, but she was very specific in the way she led that discussion. But as it relates to the political complexities that we have here in our history, there was an elected official in Houston that other people and the rumor had got around that he was paid for play. So my question to other elected officials, since your constituents are his constituents, why didn't you say something or do something? It's called political courtesy, professional courtesy.
Yeah.
And that's a problem in the Black community. Yeah. How can you, in a 10-year span of time, out of 77 schools that were repurposed and closed, 43 of them were in the Black community, and nobody called for a task force, blue ribbon task force on education. Still haven't done it to this day. So we have some internal chaos.
Issues.
Yeah, issues, chaos. We got the whole negative ball of wax that
we need to deal with.
That's right.
Well, you know
Judge,
what?
Judge, let me ask you a question. I know fitting, you know, I mean, it's a reality that we have so many African Americans who are impacted by the criminal justice system. I mean, and when we, you know, as a therapist myself, I know for a fact that a large percentage have some type of mental undiagnosed disorders or emotional trauma. As if Reginald Gordon was here, he'd be talking about the trauma from 30, 40 years ago. Some people go back as far as that. But, you know, the resource support, I mean, the idea that a person can be reconnected to reality from the chaos that's brought them to the court system, which then just puts them in the system.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that the courts implemented within the last year, it's what's called jail-based competency restoration program. And so when a person is arrested, and let's say they've never been diagnosed in the past, but they come in a crisis, there was a period where they'd have to wait for quite a while before they could either be transferred over to Vernon or a state school so they could get the help that they needed. And in order to start the treatment right away, they can begin restoration therapy right within the jail. And that was huge. I mean, it I learned about how huge it was because I'm really new in this position. I'm only in my third year, but this idea to begin to address the problem right at the very front of it is it's been transformative because now service the I guess the recognition that there was that need, and two, beyond the recognition, there was the realization and the actual resources within the jail. So that was one transformative thing that was implemented in Harris County, just to talk about at least 1/3 of the persons who are in the criminal justice system, and that's what the studies say, suffer from mental illness of some sort, whether it's anxiety, depression, or something far more serious. And the numbers are probably larger than that. So mental illness and the criminal justice system in so many ways intersect. And the idea of first being able to recognize it, and then to have the people who can actually do something. Because when a person is in a crisis with a mental health, and you know this as a therapist, they need a lawyer for the charges, but they need a therapist, they need a doctor, they need medication, they need something that lawyers are just not equipped to provide. So
very good. That was a good segue into the thought. With we've joined by the one and only Mr. Reginald Gordon, OG1. That's the prolific, involved community activist dealing with these young kids with prevention. Well, you heard the judge. We were talking about the chaos, and obviously you've been involved for many years. How do you see that? Because of, I think sometimes the chaos drives everything, but how do you see that as it relates to us getting some assistance or support for individuals who are affected?
First of all, I want to appreciate, because I come in on the last end of hearing the judge speak about what I've been in the last 5 years, knowing from the work that I've been doing, dealing with the recovery coaching after I come from prevention, learning of dealing with the new movement called Recovery Coach. And what Recovery Coach did was invest money into resources due to the opioid ODing of young white kids that brought money back to get people to work with people instead of incarcerating them, getting them the proper treatment that they need. So as a recovery coach, I've been around all the states training. I've been to all the different institutions like Texas A&M medical centers. I've learned how to deal with what is the bottom cause of why we are dealing with relapse, why we're dealing with some of the same issues of 8 out of 10 that go to prison within a 3-year period, go right back. I wanted some answers for all these different things after spending 20 years of my life. And the judge is right on point. When we know that Harris County for the last 8 to 10 years have labeled the Harris County Jail as one big mental institution. And I've been dealing with the juvenile probation department for the last 15 years, and 70% of the young men that go through and get assessed have some form, mental or mild, or extent form of mental illness. And we understand by doing studies that I've learned, that's a household name now, this word called trauma. It's become a household name since this pandemic. But the thing called trauma is something that Black men specifically black men specifically, and even black women have come from what you call transgenerational trauma. I'm suffering from what my grandfather went through, and I never understood because a lot of young men have issues of pain and agony, but they don't know how to identify with their feelings. And until we
Yes.
get, just like the judge said, until we get more mental health services into these jails, into these schools to deal with black boys that don't have to fight, flight, or survive. When you're living in these urban area, gun-fired areas where you have to fight, flight, or survive, it causes your mind to alter. Trauma alters the mind cells and how you think, how you react. 90% of the young men I deal with have emotional issues. And an emotional person do not know how to go to the reasoning part of their brain. So emotional men, what they do when they get caught in a corner, we deal with emotional things in an emotional way. We shoot first and we talk later because we don't know how to deal with our feelings. I said it and I'll say it again. That whole Harris County Jail needs to be taken over by the community and let men deal with young boys to build a safe place around reestablishing safety with these young men.
Now you know they would say that that's a part of that what they call it, the defunding.
Well, you know what
I mean. They would say it would be a part of the defunding.
We're not going to change the behavior of young men until we go in and put some real resources behind people that deals with mental problems, teach our young men how to feel safe, teach them how to feel safe in their own house, in their own personal bodies. I say that all the time. I deal with gang intervention in the city. And 90% of the young boys right now, they're what you call soft, they're called tender, they're called young men that have no courage. They don't do with their hands no more. They beef over this internet. This internet is an enemy. Internet beefing causes young men that's scary, that have no hands, but eventually when they run into the person they're beefing with over this internet, due to who they are, not having hands to deal with conversations, not knowing how to do conflict resolution, when they run into these same people they've been beefing with over this internet, they have one alternative. That's to use gunplay.
Yeah.
That's a part of the first part we were talking about, the chaos. You continue that. Dr. Mills, how do you equate that chaos based upon what OG once said in terms of a spiritual war?
Well, it goes, Doc, to the breakdown of the family. Mm-hmm. Because family unit is the basis of every society. Mm-hmm. When that breaks down, everything breaks down. And that's a spiritual problem in our community because you only have about 25%, roughly, probably less than that, of our children growing up in two-parent families. And we know spiritually that a mother has to teach love. She's your teacher. Right. And what she has to teach is love. And the first thing she has to teach is for you to love your father. Because every child knows his mother and a wife's child knows his father. And if a mother is teaching the child to love the father, then the father can train the child in the way of the Lord rather than the way of the world. And what we have going on now is women, because of the conflict between males and females, they're teaching their children to love them and hate the father. And the male child is growing up hating his father, and eventually he learns to hate himself because he has to grow up to be a man just like his father. And so that's the problem. But I want to just, bring one other thing to light that Brother Charles brought up just a few minutes ago about education. And I don't know whether you guys had a chance to read the Houston Chronicle today. If you did or if you didn't, you should, because there's a photo there about United Airlines giving Texas Southern $100,000 to its aviation program for scholarships and support for training young people to become pilots because there's a shortage of pilots. And in the picture that they displayed was a picture of the president and 3 white students. Everybody got quiet.
Our HBCUs have adjusted to population shifts in our society. They no longer hold the singular role of saying it's primarily for African American students. That's all I can say.
Well, that's all right. I don't think anyone should have a problem with that. But here's the problem. TSU is in the front door of a primarily black high school. 2 or 3 miles away, Worthing is a black school over there right off of in the Sunnyside area.
Oh, Scott.
Now, you mean to tell me whoever is doing the recruiting for Texas Southern University, they can't go and find top-notch students, male, female, at Worthing or Jack Yates and recruit them to come to Texas Southern University to get into the aviation program.
Well, wait, let me give you something to go with that. Sterling High School, when I worked over there in 91, had a high-profile aviation program that was nationally known and recognized. All you had to do is bump on down to MLK to Selinsky and recruit aviation students that's already there, and they are black.
It's the chaos. It's the chaos. I think one of the
chaos.
things.
It's the chaos.
Wait a minute. It's the chaos, and I think Charles had mentioned it earlier, the questioning of the leadership. You know, we got to be realistic with the leadership.
Wait. We need to coin a new phrase, because is it de facto leadership or no leadership or low performing? We need to give them the stigma that the community has, because they don't claim the condition that they help create.
Right.
By their policies or the lack of instituting policies,
the lack
where
of
the problem is in their district.
Right. That's a call. That's a call. What'd you say, Dr. Mills?
No, I said Brother Charles is right on it, because really a university, especially an HBCU, should not be a university. It should be a communiversity.
Oh, say that again. Say that. What's that word you said?
Y'all
coming up with new words. You coming up with new words.
Communiversity. Rather than university.
Communiversity?
Yes, sir.
We'll have to investigate that further. I mean, OG, I know you have been involved in a number of efforts that recently are addressing this issue of crime prevention. You agree with Dr. Mills and Charles on that lack of leadership? I know you do, but who are these individuals?
You know, I'm gonna say this here. You know, right there in the last month or so, the city of Houston and Harris County to put together $55 million in crime prevention money that's supposed to go where? How they find strong leadership to move this crime and violence and this corruption forward. They're looking for credible messengers now. And the credible messengers that they're looking for is the people that they choose that they can control. So we finna lose another $55 million claiming to try to transform Sunnyside, South Park, and Third Ward into a new way of looking at it. But again, we'll be another year, 2 years like I was in 1997 up to the day when I brought to the issues, when the Houston Chronicle put on the front page, seeds of trouble. Until we deal with what they said, we have seeds of trouble, and invest in mental health in the areas to change the mindset of our young people, because we can still drive down Scott Street and find some crack cocaine issues. And until we deal with the root cause of what's causing brothers to self-medicate, it's 886 young men between the age of 17 to 21 in the Harris County Jail, 800 of them, and they all coming home.
Right.
To the streets, they come to the streets.
And they're coming home angry, they're coming home frustrated, and it goes back to what you said. Where is the leadership? Because the same thing they've been asking for when they get out: housing, a livable wage, livable wage, and somebody that they can give some kind of open conversation to, because if they don't have a way to vent this pain that they're dealing with in that Harris County jail, the frustration, the agony, the problems that we're dealing with in our community, finding strong leadership, they're going to continuously do the thing. And your governor going to help keep this thing going, because, you know, they're not going to remend this gun law that they just put in place.
Judge, did I hear you say something?
No, I'm
You agree?
listening to him. Yes.
All right.
I mean, it seems like he's defining the problem. I mean,
No question about it. We're on top of that.
Okay.
Well, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you again to my distinguished guests. We certainly have had a very engaged conversation. Where do we go from here? Community chaos. Hopefully the war will be over, but the war continues in our own streets, in our communities. We have to pray for those who've been affected, not only in 3rd Ward or Houston, Texas, our communities. Pray for those around the world. Yeah. But we are definitely going to make sure we make our efforts to keep the information flowing right here from the Houston media source, public affairs, public access. I've been your host, Robert McKinley Gilmore Sr. It's always a blessing until we can say, see you again.